Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ethos Online. Again, this is a place where you can be, belong, and become the very best version of yourselves. So whether you're joining us in your living room, listening in the car, or even at work, wherever you are, thank you for joining us. We want to remind you down in the descriptions below, please remember to donate. And again, you'll find a little link there. You can click there and become a monthly donor. Also, please consider clicking that subscribe button on the YouTube channel. Also, after you do that, click the little bell. Every time we have a new video come up, that will show, hey, another video to share. Please click those buttons and continue walking with us in this awesome journey where we become better and better human beings. So today we're going to continue moving through this discussion on the Sermon on the Mount. But before we do, it's interesting. Every couple of weeks, I get more and more emails. And these emails are so fun, and I'm so grateful that so many of you will reach out. We continue the conversation. So I love it because sometimes we disagree, sometimes we agree, but it's all part of life. And again, the Jewish individuals, the rabbis, they would call this mitzvah. Right? We're continuing to move through the deeper discussion. We're actually having this deep discussion of what it means to be human using ancient literature. So thank you for your emails. Thank you for your questions. So today I'm going to try to touch on 3 of them. And again, I am giving you one perspective. And if you don't like the answers I give, that's okay too. It opens up more and more conversation. So here's one of the first messages that came in that I thought this would be an interesting one to discuss. So here it is. The question is this: why do you spend so much time discussing Judaism? And I think that's a fair one. Why do we spend so much time looking at the Greek and the Hebrew, looking at the metaphor, all of that? Why is that important? For me, when I went to school, I was studying theology. And as I was studying theology, I began to question certain things. And for me, the historical element of like, who were these people? What was the original intent? What was happening during that time? That's always been of an interest to me. And so what I did is I started studying the historicism of who wrote these pieces of literature, basically. And what I found, interestingly enough, was they were all Jewish. They were all Jewish. Jesus was Jewish. Moses would have been Jewish. All of these individuals, Israelites, right? They come from this Jewish background. So the question for me was, what do Jews believe? And so I went down this path of trying to understand what Jews believe. And so as I began to understand what Jews believe, what they don't believe, for me, the whole thing started to open up. There were certain texts and stories, certain metaphors that just started to really hum, all because I took a little bit of time to understand who the writers were. And again, it's interesting when you understand who the writers were and the culture they were in and the people they were speaking to, you also begin to understand how it's kind of shifted over time. I would argue the Christianity we have today is far less Jewish and far more Roman. And again, a lot of interesting metaphors from the Roman era, the Greek culture, all of it has kind of been mixed into Christianity, which some would argue is good, some would argue is bad. Either way, it's not quite the same Jewish Jesus message that you would have had back then, at least the interpretation and understanding today. So why do I spend so much time? Because Jesus was Jewish. Short answer. Jesus was Jewish, and that's why it's important to go there to understand it. So, great question. Thank you for posing that. Here's another one. What are some good resources to help me begin learning how to read the Bible in a more responsible way? I love this. As I was studying there in college and after college, I just started to pick up more and more resources because for me, I wanted to understand the words, the context, the culture. I wanted to get it all. And so as I studied some of the books that I thought were really important then, I began to realize, there's better books, there's better resources. And so I started with a ton, and I've begun to whittle it down to where I usually pick from a couple. And so I wanted to share with you some really great resources you could use right now. You could pick up, some of them are a little more expensive, others are a little cheaper, so you do what fits with your budget. But here's some resources. The first one, there's a really good program called BibleWorks. And BibleWorks basically, you can kind of hover over different words, and it'll give you what the original word meant. And not only that, because again, you can kind of move in some weird directions if you just do that. It'll also give you kind of the cultural understanding of what was going on. And again, I'm not being sponsored by BibleWorks, so this is just me telling you what's worked and what hasn't. This is usually around $200 for that program. Another thing that I've found is on your app, on your phone, there's a free app called Accordance. And Accordance is this really great app where all you do is you type in the verse and you kind of scroll over a couple words. And again, it will give you that word, what the Greek or the Hebrew meant. It'll also give you some other places where you'll find that word. And so again, really great resource, especially if you're kind of wondering, wait a second, like this seems so weird. Why would they use this word? When you look at it through the original perspective, the whole thing pops. For me, I learned Hebrew and Greek. That was important to me, but not everyone has time to do it. And so I think it's important that you have those really valuable resources. Another resource I had that I found really helpful is this. This is the Chumash. And basically, this is the Torah. I almost went New Testament. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. And so we've got the Torah here. The Chumash, what it is it's basically it gives you it gives you all of the Torah. And again, you'll find it's in Hebrew, and it actually moves toward the left, not the right, as you're reading. But what's fascinating about this is you'll find really interesting commentary from different rabbis over the years. So you've got some ancient ones, some more modern ones, but again, it gives you all these different perspectives. And so as you read about the culture, the context, look at the words, Chumash basically is going to give you one more tool that's going to give you an ability to really expand your understanding of the culture, the context, Judaism, and it really makes the whole thing hum. And then lastly, again, for me, there are all different kinds of options if you want to learn a little Hebrew and a little Greek. Lots of different options online. But if you even want to just dabble a little bit, I would argue it's worth it if this book, the Bible, is interesting or important to you. So, great question. I probably gave you more than you wanted to know, but just off the top of my head, those are some options, some really good resources. I would say use those. You will find the Bible, Torah, all of it just blows up. It just becomes really, really interesting. Cool. Last question, and then we'll delve into our teaching for today. What do you think Jesus would think if he saw what his teachings had become today? Man, that is like a loaded question. When I think about that, I typically go a little bit negative sometimes. I think when Jesus, again, Jewish, right, living in a Jewish culture, when he would see today what Christianity, the Christ message, Christ followers, what they've become, I honestly, and again, this is my perspective, I don't think he would recognize it. He'd be like, you got bunnies, you got like Santa Claus, you got this, you got that. You're like hanging crosses all over. Like, what's the deal? I think Jesus might be a little surprised if he were to look at the Christ message today. This is a Christian nation, and you have like the majority of the nuclear bombs in the world. Again, like I think Jesus might be a little surprised. Again, to put it real lightly, he might be surprised. I don't know that he would recognize his message as easily within what we have today as he would have back then. My thoughts, please share with me yours. Respond to my email, tonywerfel@gmail.com. And again, let's keep having the conversation. These questions are so fun to have. So let's delve in. Here we go. Sermon on the Mount. Again, you have followed through the series, and again, so much fun. Sermon on the Mount. Jesus goes up onto this mountain. Some would argue the same mountain that Moses was on. Who knows for sure? Either way, on the mountain, he does what Moses did. He begins expanding on what it means to be human, laying out guidelines for what it means to live a better life, right? Kingdom now, life right here, right now. And so again, a Jewish reader is making all the connections, right? They're making these connections to Jesus and Moses all throughout the New Testament, all throughout the gospel message. So as you continue, again, one of our favorite quotes, the Sermon on the Mount is a deeper critique into the heart of the law. It reclaims the beauty of living life in harmony together. And again, historical context, always really important. So we understand, again, these messages, the gospel message was not written during or right after the death of Jesus. No, this is all written, compiled. You'll find, again, Mark is the first one, the first gospel. And so what you'll find is this is written just after the temple is destroyed. And the people there, these Jewish people are asking, where's our hope? So many of our family and our friends have died at the hands of the Romans. Do we try to rise up again with violence? Where's our hope? Where's our people? Our temple's gone. Is Judaism gone forever? And the message of Jesus is a beautiful one because it says, no, it's not gone. In fact, it's right here. It's been here all along inside you. You are where kingdom of heaven happens. And so that message, understanding that, the whole thing it just comes alive. It's beautiful. And again, I find it interesting right now, you're listening at a time where many of us are in isolation because of COVID-19. And many people are saying, I can't go to church. Oh no, what happens to me? The reality is church is here. And many people are beginning to find that spirituality is here, right? Kingdom of heaven is here. It's not there. It's always been here. And again, that's the deeper message of Jesus. And so again, he shares this new perspective, which is kind of an old perspective, on the law. That's what he does. So we went through all the blessings first, right? We talked about happy are you if you do this, 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 and this. And so we've been moving through. We talked about fasting and prayer the last couple of weeks. Today, we're going to talk about this verse in Matthew 6. And I'll read it to you just to start. It goes like this. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, right? Where neither moth nor rust destroys, where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, many of you can just quote this by heart, there your heart shall be also. You've heard this verse. You've probably heard it quoted from 1,000 different sermons and pastors from pulpits. You've heard this quoted. But there's something really deep going on. And before I even step into it, I want to give you a little interesting context to put on this verse. Ever hear the marshmallow test? I couldn't say marshmallow. The marshmallow test. This one's so fascinating. It happened in the 1970s. It actually happened at Stanford University. And so a lot of people will do this. You can type in on YouTube marshmallow test, and you'll find tons of people still do it because it's kind of funny. And so what they did is pretty simple. They put marshmallows, one marshmallow each for each kid. They put it in front of them, and they said, if you wait 15 to 20 minutes without eating the marshmallow, we'll give you another marshmallow. So for a kid, that's a pretty big deal, right? I could get 2 marshmallow, yummy, sugar, yes. So what they did this, and what they found is they got kind of mixed results. But what they did is so fascinating in the 70s. They didn't just leave it there. What they did is they wanted to continue with the data. And so they followed the kids. They followed the kids who chose to wait and get the extra marshmallow after 15 to 20 minutes. And here's what they found. And again, I love this. I love this kind of research. What they found about the kids who said, I'm going to wait because I know I'm going to get 2. Here's what the research showed out of these students. Most kids who chose to wait for the marshmallow scored higher on their SAT scores. Interesting, right? They scored better. They had higher GPAs, all of it. They just did better in school. Another thing they noticed was this. As far as emotional coping skills, these kids, whenever they experience conflict, trauma, whatever, they handled the emotional disturbance better. Yeah, they had some emotional intelligence that the other kids didn't seem to pick up at that age that they tested them. Fascinating, right? Yeah. Another thing, these kids, they used drugs or abused drugs, or whatever you want to say. They did it less. They did not need to be dependent on other substances to be fulfilled. Yeah, fascinating, right? Again, I love this stuff. And then lastly, these kids were healthier. They had healthier weights. They seemed to live healthier, longer lives. That's what they were finding about these kids. And again, interesting stuff, because really what it's doing, it's all going back to instant gratification. Yeah, instant gratification. Here's a quote. I think this sums up the idea of instant gratification really well. And so I'm just going to quote it for you. Instant gratification is when you choose not to do something even though you know this action is necessary to help you obtain your long-term goals. The result is foregoing long-term benefits in favor of insignificant short-term pleasures that come in the form of temptations. I find that interesting, right? Basically, instant gratification is saying, you know what? I just want to be happy now. I don't care what it means for the long term. I'm not even going to think about that. I'm just going to do this thing now because it's going to make me happy, knowing it's probably not going to make me happy very long. Yeah, that's instant gratification. It's not thinking long term. I want to do something for you because we live in a culture right now where we just need things now. Right? If I want to buy something, I go to Amazon. If I open my computer, that thing's going to turn on immediately. And if it doesn't turn on within 2 or 3 seconds, I freak out. Right? Something's wrong with my computer. I need a new computer. That's where we are. I want to do something. I want to see if anyone out there knows this sound. So here we go. I'm going to play this for you. Anyone having post-traumatic stress right now, you just heard it. That was dial-up internet. And for many of us who were born in the 80s and before, that's what we were used to, right? We would wait and wait. Sometimes it would take like 2 to 3 minutes before the internet would pop up. And so again, today, that would drive kids nuts. Most of our kids don't even experience that anymore. It's just immediate. When you turn on the TV, Netflix, Hulu, all of it should pop up, right? And if it doesn't, there's a serious problem going on, right? We need instant gratification in our culture or we go crazy, right? We go absolutely nuts. We are so blinded by this, I would argue. Again, we don't see long-term. It's always pretty short-sighted. I mean, that's where oftentimes in this culture right now, we're pretty short-sighted in most of what we do. And so this verse, going back to Matthew 6, this verse, I think, comes at a really interesting time. I'm going to read it one more time to you, and then I'm going to expand a little more biblically. Here we go. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart shall be also. So, growing up, I remember this being taken a couple different ways. One of them was pretty simple. If I'm good here, if I do all the right stuff here, then I can get a bunch of stuff up there. Yeah. When I get to heaven, I finally get all the stuff I wanted. Yeah. If I just downplay everything here, if I just wait long enough, if I don't eat the marshmallow now, when I get up there, I can have like 20 marshmallows. Right? I can do this. I can fly, right? Whatever it is. We oftentimes, we go off this reward, like a very literal reward. And so heaven was oftentimes that reward that if I just wait a little bit, then I'll get it. And as childish as that sounds, I would argue many religious systems, that's kind of the core for them. That this is a very literal interpretation for so many people. Yet, when you actually read the teachings of Jesus, you understand Judaism and the words behind it, the culture, the context, this whole thing actually means something far deeper. For Jesus, here's one of my favorite, here's another quote about heaven, especially from a rabbinical standpoint. Here it is. Heaven was a state of being. It is the true state of shalom in the world. Notice that shalom, the state of being, happens here. Yeah. When one is present to this, they find it everywhere they go. You find it everywhere you go. That was the beautiful picture of heaven. What happens when you die? All of that. The Jews actually would say it's a mystery. We don't know. We'll find out when we do. Yeah. So again, this idea of heaven, a very present reality you can experience right here, right now. So again, this idea that I get the marshmallow now and I wait until, that doesn't quite add up to what this verse is saying. Now, another interesting thing to point out about this verse is that you have a group of people Jesus is speaking to. He's speaking to his followers, but he's also speaking to a bunch of religious leaders. He's speaking to the religious community as well. And oftentimes that religious community there, they were really good at following all the rules, but they had absolutely no heart in it. And so for the Pharisees, right, these were the teachers of the law. They were the elders, right? They were the church leaders, the pastors, all the gurus. That's who they were. They were the religious people. And so for them, they were really interested in short-term praise. They really loved that. They would go out into the community, and again, they would attempt to get all of the praise and the attention. They would try to get the riches, the position, all of it. If I could just, if I could be a head elder, right? Deacon is cool, but I want to be a head elder. They were always seeking those kind of things, these very temporary experiences. That was constantly what Jesus was referencing toward the Pharisees. You're just missing it, he says. And so that's why Jesus, when he talks about kingdom of heaven, when he talks about this present state of being alive, he doesn't talk about it far off, but he also doesn't talk about it as something that happens immediately. This is how he talks about it. It's really kind of beautiful. It happens now, but it's something that grows. Watch this. The kingdom of heaven, Matthew 13. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his field. Though it is the smallest of all seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds come and perch in its branches. Yeah, my family and I, we planted a bunch of plants, garden plants. We planted tomatoes, cucumbers, a ton of stuff. And my kids are always asking, when are they going to grow? In fact, we even planted some fruit trees. And so the question is, when are they going to bear fruit? Because that's important. We want plums, we want nectarines, we want peaches. We want it all, and we want it now. But here's the beauty of the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven takes time. You got to get the root system, right? You got to get the root system in first. And then as it grows, it strengthens, and this thing begins to explode. Here's what one Middle Eastern farmer said about planting there in the Middle East, and especially in regards to the mustard seed. Watch this. So beautiful. He said, and again, he's talking more of like the mustard, not necessarily the trees, but the actual plants that would grow everywhere. This is what he says about that. You plant one seed, and before you know it, you've got endless fields of this stuff. Anyone with me? That's pretty cool. The kingdom of heaven, it takes time to grow. But when it grows, after it begins to grow bigger and bigger and bigger, everywhere you look, you see it. I have people all the time, they say, oh, the world's so bad. How do you see good anymore? All I see is evil. And I'm thinking, oh, you got some like really shallow roots. You're missing the whole thing. The kingdom of heaven, when it begins to grow, you begin to see it everywhere in everything. It's everywhere you look because you begin to realize you've been surrounded by it the whole time. It's been growing all around you. You just weren't aware of it yet. But as it begins to poke out through the surface of the ground, it begins to make itself known everywhere. And that's something really, really beautiful. So, the kingdom of heaven, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. Here's the thing about this. When your treasure, when your fulfillment is found in short-term things, basically you're walking toward a lot of pain and brokenness. Yeah, those treasures that, buying something on Amazon, right? Getting likes on Facebook for a certain post, whatever it is, those things are so short-term and they can be taken away so easily. Think about that. You make a post on Facebook and you think you've been really clever, right? And you feel really good because you got 10 likes, but then it takes one troll to get on and say something negative. and your whole experience is ruined. So short term, right? You buy the thing on Amazon. You buy the shiny junk, and it's great until it breaks or it's stolen. Do you see? It can so easily, that fulfillment, that sense of like, oh, that feels nice. It is so short term when it's revolving all around stuff. But here's what I love about what Jesus says. When you look further, where neither rust nor moths or rust destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. When you understand, again, the treasure, that treasure is found within you. It's found when you begin working on the goals that are far off. When you begin to have a sight that is actually set for deeper things, things that actually take time to grow. When that becomes your focus, it can't be taken away. You've worked so hard for it because it's become part of you. It's become part of your character. It's become the kingdom of heaven all around you, and no one can take that away because it's not stuff anymore. It's actually become the very fabric of who you are. And again, that's why I love this marshmallow test. The marshmallow test, the kids that took the marshmallow, for many of them, that's where the story ended, right? For many of them, they didn't continue growing emotionally, and many of them became these childish adults, right? Unhealthy childish adults. But for these kids who said, I'm going to focus, and again, this is one study, right? But again, think bigger. For the people who focus on the long term, the people who focus on the bigger picture, those are the people who it happens here. And that's the stuff. And all the other things that they gain along the way, it's just stuff. Because the inner journey has been the goal all along. And when that happens, man, talk about kingdom of heaven. That's the beauty of this message Jesus shared. It's so good. And if I were to basically say his teaching today in a more applicable way, this is how I might say it. Consider placing your time, resources, and energy in the things that will bring long-term fulfillment. Think about the long term. Don't get so caught up in the short-sightedness that's right before you. Think of the long term. And when you do, you experience success and you experience fulfillment, real fulfillment. So the question, of course, is how do we do this? Right? It's so easy to talk about, but when you actually have to live it, that's a whole different story. So how do we do this thing? How do we actually live it? Here's a couple ideas that I found from a lot of different experts that I think I'm going to start trying for myself. First one is this: consider the long term. Take time to have long-term eyesight. When considering a decision, take time to think where your future self will be. I love this idea. Checking in with your future self periodically. What would Tony 10 years, 5 years from now say when I make this decision right here? What is this going to pull me from? When I say yes to that thing, I'm actually saying no to a lot of other things. I might even be saying no to a long-term goal I have. It could potentially be ruin it for me, right? What would Tony 5 years from now? What would Amy 5 years from now? What would Philip 5 years from now? What would Karen 5 years from now? What would that person say? What would you say 5 years from now to you right now about to make the decision you're making? I think if you make decisions that way, man, life is so much better. Here's another one. Practice self-control. Yeah, right. Practice self-control. But here's the thing. I love that they say do it in small steps. Because in our culture, it's so hard to do. You see something, you want it, you take it. It's just part of life. We're not taught how to have self-control very well anymore today in our culture. And so I like that they say do these tiny, small steps. Learn to say no to things that create destructive patterns, yes to things that will bring about long-term happiness. Essentially, just focus on those baby steps first. What are small things I can do right now to start planning? And maybe that's as simple as like, hey, I'm going to open a savings account and I'm going to put away, $10 a month. Or maybe $10 a week, whatever it is, I'm going to start doing something that reminds me of the long term. Small baby steps is a way to go. Display visual reminders. Put this thing everywhere. Here is where I want to be in 10 years. Here's the idea. I want to be debt free. So if you want to be debt free, make sure you post that somewhere so you don't forget, right? I want to be at peace with myself. I want to be able to leave some of the baggage behind. I want to be free. Okay, remind yourself of that. Remind yourself daily with some kind of visual. Last one, be accountable. Not only be accountable to yourself, but also one expert says it's so good to have a mentor. It's so good to have other people walk the journey with you. And again, asking them maybe once a month, twice a month, whatever, check in with me, would you? Check in with me on how I'm doing long term. Having someone check in with you is just a simple reminder. I want to have that long term vision. I want to be a person who doesn't just do certain things in order to fulfill a desire now and then ruin it for later. I want to be a person who is living kingdom now and it only explodes and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I want to be the kind of person that lives that life someday. And to get there, I need to start making those steps, but I need to be held accountable. Yeah, really good. So again, consider placing your time, resources, and energy in things that will bring long-term fulfillment. Those are the words of Jesus, again, I find so compelling, especially applications for today. So good, right? I hope you enjoyed this. Again, I love that just one little, 2 or 3 verses are opening up so much in me. I mean, they're causing me to have to rethink so much. And this is the beauty of these teachings. These Jesus teachings are packed with so much meaning for today. So again, I hope you enjoyed this. Please donate. Go to ethos-church.org/donate. Donate there. Give. You can give monthly. You can give daily. You can give, but please consider donating there because, again, we love to do these things. We love to put out the videos, the podcasts, the blogs. We love to participate with Ethos Living Rooms. And again, Ethos Living Rooms, that's basically the first and the third. We get together with a bunch of people online, and it is growing. It's been so much fun to see so many people joining us from all over Colorado, Washington, Michigan, Ohio, Florida. We have people from all over, and they're joining weekly to have discussions on how to be a better human being. And we typically are going to use the teachings of Jesus to kind of guide that, because that's been our narrative growing up. So if you want to be a part of that, please email me at tonywerfel@gmail.com. That's WUERFEL if you can't spell my last name. Send me the email and I'll send you the link. And again, it's so fun to be in community with people, especially during this time where we're all living in isolation. It's good to be reminded we're not alone. And so again, subscribe, hit the bell. We love you all. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so happy to be able to offer this place where we can be, belong, and become the best version of ourselves. Thank you, everyone. Love you. See you next week. Bye.